The ranges of control that an engineer has are the same as those of the sculptor. Both are working in 3 dimensions.
We have now mapped out the space between the speakers where imaging occurs. This is a stage or palette where we can create different structures of mixes. Now let's discuss the elements that we can place between the speakers. Years ago, I started out with a dot on my Macintosh in the program MacPaint. I figured if I moved the dot left and right, it was like panning. However, after a while, I realized that you can commonly have 2 sounds in the same spot between the speakers and still hear both of the sounds. Therefore, I got a 3D program so that I could make the images be see-through or transparent. Now, using the equipment in the studio, we can place any sound anywhere in the 3D stereo field with volume faders, pan pots, and EQ. With panning, we can move a sphere left and right. With volume, we can move the sphere front to back. With equalization, we can move the sound up and down, at least a little bit. Of course, no matter how much bass we add to a piccolo, we'll never be able to get it to rumble the floor. And we won't be able to put a bass guitar in the sky. But if we are mapping out pitch as a function of up and down with EQ, we can raise a sound up or down at least a little bit. So, as you see, we can place a sound anywhere between the speakers in 3D with volume, panning, and EQ. Now, the whole goal here is to show how much space each sound takes up between the speakers so we can deal with the big problem of masking. Just how big is each sound in this world of imaging? This is important because sometimes one sound will hide another sound when they are in the same place. Therefore, if this is a limited space between the speakers, we need to know how big each member of the crowd is, right? First, bass instruments seem to take up more space between the speakers, so we make them big. Think about it. Put 3 bass guitars in a mix, and what do you have?
Hip-hop?
Yeah, but in any other style of music, you end up with Mud City. I mean, you put 3 bass guitars in a mix, and it fills up the space between the speakers completely. On the other hand, put 10 bells in a mix, and even if they're all playing at the same time, you can hear every single one individually. Because bass instruments are bigger in the world of image, and they mask other sounds more, they hide other sounds in a mix, especially when turned up loud. Also, louder sounds will appear larger because of perspective. This also rings true because louder sounds do mask other sounds more. A guitar that is extremely loud in a mix will tend to mask the other sounds more than if it were soft in the mix. Besides round spheres, we also have oblong spheres. This is an unusual effect that happens when we put a delay on a sound less than 30 milliseconds.
1,000 milliseconds equals 1 second.
When you have a delay longer than 30 milliseconds, you hear an echo, like this. However, when you have a delay less than 30 milliseconds, our ear is not quick enough to hear the difference between the 2 sounds, so we only hear one sound, one fat sound. When you place the original signal in the left speaker, then put the delayed signal in the right speaker, it's as if it stretches the sound between the speakers. It doesn't put the sound in a room like reverb, it just makes it omnipresent between the speakers. Just as volume, panning, and EQ can be used to place and move spheres, We also have control over the placement of this line of sound created by fattening. We can place the line anywhere from left to right using pan pots, up front or in the back using volume, or even move it up or down a little bit with EQ. When we place reverb in a mix, we are placing the sound of a room in the space between the speakers. A room, being three-dimensional, is shown as a three-dimensional see-through cube between the speakers. Again, with reverb, we can place it anywhere in the 3D stereo field using panning, volume, and EQ. We now have defined and visualized the basic tools that an engineer uses to sculpt this three-dimensional space between the speakers, spheres, lines, and rooms. With them, the engineer can design a wide range of structures ranging from sparse mixes to full mixes, to asymmetrical mixes, to symmetrical mixes, to a mix with a lot of movement. As previously mentioned, the art of mixing is the creative placement and movement of these sound images. Just as a musician needs to explore and become thoroughly familiar with all of the possibilities of his or her instrument, so must an engineer be aware of all possible musical dynamics that the equipment can create. And he or she must be adept at coming up with any structure of mix that can be conceived. Mixes can be transparent or invisible. Some styles of music have traditionally been made to be invisible so you don't hear the mix, like acoustic jazz, bluegrass, or folk music. On the other hand, the mix could be quite visible. In some styles of music, engineers often use the equipment in the studio to create musical dynamics. The mix is utilized almost like another instrument in the song. Regardless of the style of music, the one thing we can all agree on is that the mix should be appropriate for the song. The mix should fit the song like clothing suits your personality. The mix can be used as a tool to enhance the song and highlight certain aspects, or it can be used to create tension or chaos when appropriate. Regardless of how it fits, the mix should fit the style of music and song in some way. The creative engineer pushes the limits of what has already been done.